All right, what's good, everybody? It's your boy, Jeff Charles. Welcome to another edition of A Fresh Perspective with Jeff Charles, where we prefer truth over narrative and principles over personalities. Sorry for the delay. I'm having some technical issues, and I'm going to tell you a little story about that in a second. But yeah, life hasn't been so good for me on the technology front lately. I think I talked about it on Twitter a little bit, but whatever. That's how it goes sometimes. Just open up some stuff here. Come on in. Let me know you're live in the chat. Let me know if you can hear me, because I'm not sure if the microphone's working. All right. What's good, everybody? We've got some cool stuff to talk about. Just pull something up really quick. I'm a little bit out of sorts, but I'll be all right. We'll still have fun. All right. And this is good here. Everybody, let me know how your weekend went while I'm getting this fixed really quick. Hopefully it went well. Mine was good. I was at CPAC, and I'll be telling you a little bit about that. Give you some thoughts on it. Okay. All right, here we go. Now, just a couple of announcements before I get started. Last week, I interviewed Gabrielle Clark. I don't know if you saw that, but if you haven't, check out that video after this or whenever you get a moment. We talked about critical race theory and her lawsuit against her son's school. It was about critical race theory and about, woke theology, what I call woke theology. Very good interview, very enlightening. I'm going to be having some more interviews coming up. I think I've got one going on Thursday. Again, on the same subject, critical race theory. And I'm going to be doing some more content on that. I've got some stuff lined up, and I think it's going to be enjoyable. Now, before I go forward, too, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to this video. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and that way you'll get notified whenever I upload a new video. Please like and share it. That all helps me with the algorithms. I need some algorithmic love, so I would really appreciate any of that. If you want to support my work, subscribe to my online community at afreshperspective.locals.com. It's only $4.99 per month, and you'll get access to premium content that other people don't get. Also, if you want to do a one-time donation, you can hit this link up here, or however you want to do it. One-time donations are fine. They're great. If you feel like you're learning something, or if you're getting something out of these live streams, any help would be appreciated. Also, you can also leave me a super chat if there's a burning question that you have or something that you really want to say to me, or if you just want to support me, you can hit me with the super chat as well. That also helps. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about CPAC for a little bit. I am going to address the whole Megyn Kelly thing. I wasn't planning on it, but I'm going to address that really, really quickly. So I'm going to talk about that, CPAC. I'm going to talk about socialism, because we all love socialism. And we're going to talk about this new thing where Biden and company are trying to see if they can censor people's text messages in relation to supposed misinformation about the COVID-19 vaccination and all that jazz. But before we get started with that, just want to give a shout out to my sponsor. LibertyNation.com is a proud sponsor of A Fresh Perspective with Jeff Charles. Check out LibertyNation.com for your conservatarian news, original articles and analysis, videos, podcasts, LN Radio, and their signature TV program, The Conservative 5. All on LibertyNation.com, conservative news where truth matters. And I'm on a lot of their video stuff, especially The Conservative 5. So you can come see me and my friends over there while we chop it up. So let's get started with CPAC. I'm sorry. Let's start with Megyn Kelly, because that's fun. I want to get that out of the way. I'm not going to talk about it for a long time. I mean, you saw what I tweeted out about it. You already know where I stand. But just to give you a refresher, Megyn Kelly got in trouble because she has her podcast and she was interviewing a comedian named Chrissy Mayer. And Chrissy Mayer is a Trump supporter, although she wasn't always a Trump supporter. And she was present on January 6th at the Capitol building. She was not involved in the riots, but she was there for the event. And they were having a conversation about it. And it's funny because when I was listening to the podcast this morning, and I just started listening to Megyn Kelly's podcast, I haven't always listened to it. Once Megyn Kelly said what she said, I was like, ooh, she's going to get in trouble. And I was right. And she basically, what her argument was that the media was hyping up the riots at the United States Capitol. They were exaggerating it and making it sound worse than it actually was. Now, she wasn't saying that it wasn't bad. She was saying that, that it should be condemned. It was bad. But she was specifically talking in context of people who were saying that it was worse than 9/11. Which is one of the most idiotic arguments that I've ever heard in my life. And she played a clip of Matthew Dowd on MSNBC, and he actually made this contention. Now, to be fair, his reasoning is because after 9/11, we became more united. And after the January 6th riots, we became more fragmented. And I don't 100% agree with that, because I still contend that the vast majority of people on the right and the left condemn the riots. Now, I know the media wants you to think that most conservatives are okay with the riots that happened. It's not true. There's no evidence of that. And as a matter of fact, there's evidence to the opposite. And now there were some Republican lawmakers who did try to downplay it. So I'm not saying that nobody's trying to downplay what happened. I mean, I think Paul Gosar and some others, one of them was pretending like they were just going on a tour or what have you. Yeah, no, it was bad. They were destroying the property. They were destroying windows. They were taking crap on the floor, messing around in Nancy Pelosi's office. They looted. They engaged in all kinds of horrible behavior. They fought with cops, which was very interesting. They fought with cops, and a lot of cops were injured. One died, although they found that the cop died of natural causes. So, but I'm not sure if that meant that he was going to die anyway at that point. I don't think that's the case. It sounds like the stress of the situation brought on something that was going on. But other than that, there were people who died. Now, I think one or two of them didn't even die at the riots. They died separately from that event, but the media lumps them in because they want to make it sound worse than it actually is. One of them got trampled, I know that, and then one was shot by the police, unjustly, in my opinion. I'm consistent with this stuff. I don't care what the political affiliation is. I don't care what the skin color is. If a police officer shoots an unarmed person and there's no good reason for it, I'm going to come down on it. So yes, I do think that Ashley Babbitt's shooting was unjustified. I'm not going to get too much into that. But again, Megyn Kelly wasn't saying that the riot wasn't something that should be condemned. She was just calling out those who are basically diminishing the experience of people, of the families of the victims of 9/11, by making this event sound like it's in the same league, when it very clearly was not. I've been going back and forth. I mean, I posted that thing on Twitter, and I expected a couple people to tell me that 9/11 wasn't as bad, because, there's always those folks. But I didn't expect as many. It was very interesting. Arguments were horrible, very bad, because I think what happened is that when I tweeted it, when people react emotionally, they think you're saying something that you're not really saying. So they thought I was downplaying it. I was like, no, I'm not downplaying it. If you remember what I was tweeting from that day, I was all on Trump's ass for the way he handled that or mishandled it. I was roundly condemning the people involved in it. I was calling them thugs, and I still call them thugs because they were thugs. There's no way around that. I got flack from the right for doing that because, like I said, there's stupidity on both sides, right? But the thing is, I wasn't saying that the riots weren't bad. Now, I may not agree to the extent to which they were bad. Do I think that this will forever be a blight on American history? No. Come on now. We've had the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. We've had the Civil War. We've had the shooting of Vietnam protesters. We've had all kinds of horrible shit happen in our history. This doesn't even compare, in my opinion. Now, people have argued, they were trying to do a coup attempt. They were trying to take over the government. And I was just arguing with the guy about this just now, and he's probably watching this. But we were going back and forth, and it became comical to me, because it's like, if people had guns, if there were groups of militias trying to get to the Capitol, then I would agree. I'd be like, okay, yeah, now this is significant. but there were like 4 or 5, 6 people who had guns. The rest, what were they going to do? Were they going to beat up the Capitol Police? were they going to go in there like kung fu fighting? Like the police have guns, and yeah, they were outnumbered, but the guns though, I mean, they got rifles, they've got handguns, they've got pistols, they've got riot equipment, they've got all kinds of weapons. So these people expect me to believe that these thugs were going to punch their way into taking over the most powerful government that has ever existed. Come on now. Like, we got to ask these questions. We got to start thinking critically instead of reacting emotionally. But again, that doesn't mean that what they did wasn't bad. But the notion that we are supposed to put this on the same level as 9/11 is absurd. And by the way, I'm not making a straw man argument. It wasn't just Matthew Dowd who said this. I posted a thread on Twitter with multiple media sources comparing this to 9/11. And that's just what I was able to find. I could have kept scrolling down and found a lot more, but I didn't because I have a life. But the bottom line, and my contention isn't that all of the left is doing this, or that all the activist media is saying that this is like 9/11. But there are a significant number of individuals and organizations doing it. So it's worth commenting on, right? I know for a fact, if I ever got on this platform right here, if I ever got on YouTube right here, and I said that the George Floyd riots were worse than 9/11, y'all know exactly what would happen. I would get all kinds of scorn and derision and criticism, and I would deserve every single drop of it. So let's be consistent, right? We can acknowledge that the riots were horrible. And we can do this without pretending that this was just as bad as an event that took over 3,000 American lives and resulted in 2 major wars, one of which we're still fighting today, that resulted actually in another resurgence of an Islamic terrorist group, ISIS. You remember when that happened? And they ended up killing more people? Yeah, that's worse than what happened on January 6th, guys. That's a lot worse. Now, does that mean that we should dismiss this? No. I mean, the FBI has come out and said that some of these groups might actually be dangerous. So I take that seriously. Again, I don't base this on political affiliation. If there are white supremacist groups who are right-wing that are a danger, that needs to be addressed. There's nothing wrong with admitting that. I'm pretty sure none of us want more people to die. We don't want more terrorism. But we're not helping anything. And especially for the people who are calling for unity, you can't say you want unity, but then you are using the actions of a few to paint the actions of the larger organization. That sounds a lot like what I say to conservatives about Black Lives Matter, doesn't it? So we're both doing this stuff, and it needs to stop. So that's just all I wanted to say on Megyn Kelly. You know, if there are more developments that come up, then I'll comment then. But I think we need to, one, the media needs to stop engaging in this bullshit. And we also need to stop falling for it. The reason they do it is because we fall for it and we end up thinking, oh, well, most of Black Lives Matter are terrorists and they're violent. No. Oh, well, most Trump supporters are secretly in line with those who stormed the Capitol. Nope, that ain't true either. Okay. So, CPAC. I want to highlight a few things. Now, this CPAC in Dallas was different from the one in Orlando. Now, the difference from my experience, the speakers and the events and the breakout sessions were more profound and better than it was at Dallas. And I'm not saying that the speakers at Dallas weren't any good, because they were. Most of them were. Some of it was boring. I will tell you that. Well, as far as the speaking goes, I was more bored in Dallas than I was in Orlando. Again, I'm not knocking anybody. Maybe that I just wasn't interested in some of the topics they were discussing. But it wasn't as dynamic. It wasn't as, punchy. There were some speeches that were. Like, you need to catch Autry Pruitt's speech. I didn't get to catch that in person, and I'll tell you why in a second. But he brought down the house. President Trump, his speech was okay. I mean, it's just the normal Trump speech. Nothing really special there. He didn't make any special announcements. He did, the usual bashing Joe Biden and establishment Republicans, just the stuff that he should be doing in the role that he's in right now. One speech that stood out to me was Don Huffines, and I want to interview this guy. This guy he's a former Texas state senator, and he is running against Governor Greg Abbott here for the governorship in the primaries. him and Alan West, and I think a couple other people are trying to oust Abbott and become the governor. But when he took the stage, I didn't expect him to go after Greg Abbott like that. I expected him to kind of low key do it, but then kind of give an overall speech about the issues that we're dealing with, like immigration. And he did. He criticized the Democrats for calling on Americans to, quote, surrender to open borders, to sexualizing our children, to closing our businesses and killing our babies. He didn't mince words. He took it to him. I had to give this guy some respect. But he didn't pull any punches when it came to Greg Abbott. And by the way, Governor Abbott was not present at the event because he's been trying to preside over this special session. So he couldn't make it. So Hafine said, quote, Greg Abbott's been governor for 6 years. He could have secured the border 6 years ago or 6 months ago. Why isn't the border secure? Now, some of that's a little bit unfair because this is something that the federal government is supposed to do. But as we're seeing now, states are stepping up because Biden's administration doesn't really want to do much about the border. Or if they do, they're too inept to do something about it. Hafines also said that Abbott, quote, put 3 million Texans on unemployment and dependent on the government in one day. And, quote, closed all of our churches on the holiest week of the year, Easter. And he also slammed Abbott for his handling of the winter storm that we had here in February, which was horrible. You guys can probably remember me whining about it. But, I mean, he slammed him for his handling of the electrical grid failure. And that criticism was warranted. Now, to be fair, it wasn't just Abbott's fault. It was also his predecessors. It was also other elements of the Texas state government. But Hafines, the dude laid it out. He said, quote, earlier this year, we were within 4 minutes of our electrical grid having a complete meltdown and sending us all into the Stone Age. Texas is the energy capital of the world. It's another embarrassment of failed leadership. They can't even keep the lights on. Now, I will tell you, as a Texas voter, that speaks to me because I was without water and without power for about 7 days. And there were millions of us dealing with that. And when we learned that it was because people just kept kicking the can down the road, when we learned that it was incompetence, we weren't very happy. And heads kind of rolled for it, but I think they just expect us to get over it because those types of winter storms don't happen often in Texas. But here's the thing. Not only did it leave people without electricity, people died because of this. So what I thought was very interesting, in a crowd full of conservatives, these people were giving him a roaring applause when he was savaging Governor Abbott. Now, remember, President Trump endorsed Greg Abbott. And now here you have this guy on the stage, calling him everything but a child of God. And people are clapping for it. And not all of these people are from Texas. So that kind of tells me that, even more than Abbott, maybe there is still some dissatisfaction with people who they might see as part of the establishment, or even people who just gave into the orders to lock down the state. Because you saw in South Dakota, and I'm going to get to Kristi Noem in a second, they didn't really do the lockdowns like that, and neither did Florida, not to the same extent. But I remember when Governor Abbott a few months ago announced, okay, we're going to open up all the way, some people were clapping for it, and Abbott was like expecting to get props for it, but people were like, well, you should have never locked us down in the first place. So there is some dissatisfaction there, and I'm going to be keeping an eye on this guy. I want to interview him. But like I said, Alan West is also running. I might talk about him at some point, but yeah, I'm not all that enthusiastic about it. But I also I think it's a long shot anyway, because like I said, Abbott has Trump support and he still is pretty popular in the state. But then there was also Governor Kristi Noem. I'm not going to say too much about it, but the reason I thought her speech was interesting is because she is very well liked. And this is kind of what I thought would happen, because if you remember when she kind of caved in on the whole transgender thing, people were saying, oh, no, she's out of the running for anything. Oh, her star is faded, that she'll never be anything anymore. Well, no, she's still very much well loved. During her speech, she said, quote, I was the very first governor that when Texas and Arizona asked for help, I sent my National Guard troops down there to help. I'm thankful that the governors asked, And if the federal government's going to fail to do their job, then governors are the ones who are going to have to step up and do it. So she is positioning herself. Now, I don't necessarily think that she's going for a presidential run just yet, but she might be positioning herself for another position, maybe in the cabinet, or maybe vice president, or maybe president later on down the road. But she also took it to other Republicans too. Like there was a willingness on the part of a lot of these people to call out other Republicans. And as somebody who calls out Republicans all the time myself, I'm kind of loving it. So she said, quote, "You talk about rewriting history. Let's talk about rewriting history. We've got Republican governors across this country pretending they didn't shut down their states, that they didn't close their beaches, that they didn't mandate masks, that they didn't issue shelter in places. Now, I'm not picking fights with Republican governors. All I'm saying is we need leaders with grit." I like how she ended that. I'm not picking a fight. I'm just calling you guys out. So, so that was very interesting. And other than that, CPAC, while it may not have been as great for me as far as speakers go, I got a lot of great networking opportunities. I met a lot of cool people. I spent a lot of time with some cool people, and made some connections that I think will be good, that'll pay off in the future. So I think overall, it was a good conference, at least for me. Let's see, what do you guys think? I talked about a couple things there. Okay. Joseph Francis Burton, "That's not really fair. I am 100% over COVID, but everybody I know was terrified on Easter 2020. We watched Mass from home." And I understand that. I do understand that. You know, it's funny, the church that I just started going to about a month ago, or maybe a few weeks ago, I've been wanting to go for a while, and I discovered it online like early to mid last year. And so I went up there. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to finally start going to church again. And I got my feelings hurt because the building was closed. I'd forgotten, oh yeah, they're probably closed. And so I had to wait, and they just started opening up again. So I understand that people were scared, but I think what people would say is that people should be allowed to choose, because there were a lot of churches who would open, and they would have masks, they would do social distancing, and people can choose whether to go or not. Some churches had to do it to where you had to register to be able to go, on Sunday, and that's it. But I do get why people were concerned. I mean, I think we were all concerned. Let's see. Arnold A., "It was very frustrating, and people are still ticked off about the power issues. Abbott will probably have difficulty in 2022 getting the nomination." He might. I still think it's kind of a long shot, but I could be wrong. Maybe I'm underestimating the dissatisfaction here, because I mean, at first when Abbott came out, I was like, okay, he seems good. And in some ways, I still like him. But I mean, some of the stuff was just like, dude, I mean, you govern no different from a Democrat governor. Let's see. All right, so I'm going to continue here. Remember, I got a new magic water jug. We're going to talk about socialism. The battle against socialism. Let me see how I'm doing on time. Okay, I'm good. So a colleague of mine at libertynation.com named Andrew Moran, I've read some of his articles here before, and he wrote an article which was titled "Polls Show Socialism is Still Hip with the Kids." The link is in the show notes if you want to check it out. But he wrote about a new survey that came out that revealed that while most of America still rejects socialism and bloated government, the trend is actually gaining popularity with younger Americans, or younger people in general, because it's not even here in just the United States. But here's what he wrote. He wrote, quote, "According to a new poll by Axios and Momentive, 49% of Americans aged 18 to 34 possessed a positive view of capitalism, while 46% did not. Within this demographic, 42% of Gen Zers, which is 18 through 24, maintained a positive position on capitalism, and 54% said they disapproved of the present system. Even young Republicans are shifting their positions, with only 66% of youthful GOP voters holding an upbeat attitude about capitalism, down from 81% in 2019. A slim majority, 51%, of young Americans reported being ebullient about socialism. Ebullient. See, Andrew likes to use these like $5,000 words because he thinks he's clever. But you have to have a dictionary sometimes to read this man's articles because the guy is brilliant, especially on economics. I will, at some point, I'm going to have him on my show to talk about economics because he like knows everything there is to know about it. And he also happens to be the only libertarian in Canada. There's probably like 2 or 3 more, but yeah, very few libertarians in Canada. But isn't that weird? Especially with the GOP voters in that age group. 81% in 2019 had a favorable view of capitalism, and now it's at 66%. That's insane. So, but it doesn't stop there. Like I said, it's not just in the United States. He writes, these opinions are common across the pond too. For example, a recent study by the Institute of Economic Affairs learned that about 2/3 of young Britons would support implementing a socialist system as it would breed compassion, cooperation, and solidarity in the broader society. And here's the thing. I mean, the United Kingdom is already pretty far to the left, but 2/3 of young Britons want to go even further. So what's the deal here? I mean, socialism has been like a four-letter word. It's been akin to a political 4-letter word, and nobody wanted any part of that except for a very small percentage. And like I said, most Americans still reject it. But again, among the younger generations, it's very popular. Andrew Moran, he writes, quote, "Today, the philosophy is now equated to equity, fairness, and justice. So why is it no longer a dirty word?" And he quotes an article that I wrote about this a while ago. Actually, in 2019, I wrote this. And I was saying back in 2019 that that conservatives are overly focused on attacking socialism, and they're not as much focused on selling capitalism. So in 2019, when 81% of young Republicans favored capitalism, I was saying then this isn't going to last, because when you focus more on attacking what the bad guys are doing, the bad guys, and you don't focus on what you bring to the table, you're going to lose. I use this example all the time. My background has been in sales. Before I became a content creator and a journalist, I was in sales, and my job was to persuade everybody every day. And whenever I had mentors or trainers or people who would help me hone my sales technique, they would tell me, when you're approaching a prospect and you ask, what company that they're using right now, don't bash the competition. You never want to lead with bashing the competition. In fact, in some cases, it may make sense to even compliment the competition. You always want to focus more on what your product or service brings to the table and why it's better than what they're using right now. You focus on emphasizing the benefits. You focusing on how your product or service will benefit them better than who they're using right now. You don't just say, oh, that company sucks, because that's a losing strategy. It doesn't work. So what I wrote back then is, quote, "If right-leaning Americans want to stop the rising popularity of socialism, they must communicate what they are for and not only what they are against. In the end, putting forth the benefits of capitalism will be far more persuasive than relying solely on an aggressive offense." Unfortunately, the conservative movement, we don't get this yet. I think some people are starting to get it more, but we just don't get this. I will tell you right now, that is why that percentage went from 81% to 66%, and why more Gen Zers have a favorable view towards socialism. Because AOC, the Ocasio-Cortezes, the Rashida Tlaibs, the Jamal Bowmans, the Bernie Sanders, they are much better at selling socialism than we are at selling capitalism. As a matter of fact, I will even say this: Bernie Sanders, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Rashida Tlaib, Ayanna Pressley, and the rest of the squad, they are far more passionate about socialism than our leaders are about capitalism. I'll say that again. The squad, the far left progressive wing of the Democratic Party, is far more passionate and emotional about selling socialism and socialist policies than our leaders on the right are about selling the free market solutions. Who do we have selling free market solutions? I'm going to say it. Old white men. That's it. You don't really have a lot of leaders on the right who are really gung-ho about getting out there and saying, this is why free market solutions are the best. The people who are most passionate about it are the people who don't get the microphone. They don't get the spotlight. We need to fix that because if we don't, this trend will continue. Now, I actually interviewed Andrew about this on LNTV, and I asked him, do you think that we should be concerned about this? Or do you think that, like in other generations, that they'll grow out of it? Because people do tend to become more conservative as they get older. And I do think that will probably happen here, but how much? And if they're so far to the left, how much more conservative will they get? I mean, will they just be less on the left as they get older? We need to be concerned about this. Because if we can't even convince young people, then it's only going to be a matter of time before they get older and people our age start to come around on socialism, or at least be willing to tolerate it, because they're not being presented with a viable alternative. We need better salespeople on the right. We need better salespeople for free markets, for capitalism, for limited government, for lower taxes, all of it. And right now, we don't have a very robust sales force. The Republican Party needs a better sales force because the Democrats, they've got it in spades. What do you guys think? Let's see. Are you sure that's a jug and not a drum? You keep messing with me, I'll get an entire keg in here, a keg of water. And I'd probably drink it all too. More feelings over rational thought. That's true, but guess what? There's a saying in the world of sales. The purse strings or the wallet is tied to the heart, not to the brain. See, y'all out there think that you make buying decisions based on rational thought, and you don't. You make it based on emotion. We know this. I'm not saying there's no rational thought. I'm not saying rationality doesn't come into play, but we know how to play on your emotions. We can make you feel good about a product. You'll buy it. You'll buy it even if you don't need it. So yeah, it is feelings over rational thought. And I know that we don't always think it should be, but when it comes to persuasion, it is what it is. That's human nature. So when they see the passion of Bernie Sanders and the passion of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, these kids can be more easily swayed. And even older people can be swayed by that. If you think that Trump didn't play on emotions when he got elected, you're tripping. Donald Trump is a master salesman. Whether you like him or not, you have to admit it, his persuasion game is on point. I'm sure many of you probably, when you watch him, thought, this guy sounds kind of like a used car salesman, because he does. I mean, that's one of the reasons why he's been successful. But yeah, you're right. It totally is more feelings over rational thought. And the sooner that we come to peace with that, the better off we'll be. Let's see. Oh, wait. My thing skipped around. Okay. Young people just hear free X, free Y, free Z, and don't have the life experience to understand long-term consequences. Unfortunately, people who understand that are old white men. Okay, I'm going to agree and disagree with you there. You're right. They do hear free, 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 and they think that's a great thing. But here's the thing. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is not selling free college. She's not. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is not selling a solution to climate change so that we don't all die. These people are not selling, more welfare or student loan forgiveness. That's not what they're selling. What they're selling is what they think those things are going to do. What they're selling is a utopian vision. They are selling a standard of life that is reliant on government. So they're not focused on free education as much as they are, you'll always be able to get a job and earn a living wage, and you won't have to worry about being poor and being out on the street. That's what she's selling to you. She's not selling you free education. See, free education and welfare and And, universal basic income is how they will get us there, supposedly. But that's not what they're selling. They're selling, this is sales 101. You sell the outcome, not necessarily the item itself. You sell the outcome, you give the vision of what the customer wants, and then you explain how your products and services will get them there. These people are very good at what they do. And I'm pretty sure that they've been trained. So you are right. They hear free X and free Y, but no, that's not all they're hearing. What they're mainly hearing is, we can save the world. We can save America. We can get rid of poverty. That's what they're hearing, because that's what AOC and Bernie Sanders are selling. Let me know if that makes sense. Let's see. Oh, and by the way, guess who doesn't do that? Old white men. All right, just saying. I don't have anything against old white men. I love old white men, good people. But on the right, they don't know how to sell. We need a better sales force. I might have to write an article about that. That sounds like a good headline, good op-ed. Thanks, you guys. You guys gave me a good idea. All right. Most Gen Z don't really believe in free college, but it should be a lot cheaper to them. Tell them what it is and actually do it. Okay, yeah. It should be cheaper. But and I would suspect that you're right about that. I would think that most Gen Z, even the ones who maybe support socialism, they might not necessarily go as far as to say, no, it should all be free, but it should be easier to attend college. And that's a debate there too. I mean, because if more people go to college, does it diminish the value of a degree? We've kind of seen that happen. So there's arguments on both sides of that. Let's see. Joseph Francis Burton. When I was young, I heard the Rush song, "You Don't Get Something for Nothing." And that was the sales pitch that won me over. Yeah. But again, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I would argue that it wasn't just those words. It was the vision that it put in your head. Working hard to get what you want, having that feeling of accomplishment, that you went out and you started that business and you made tons of money, you could support your family, and you worked your ass off for it. That's what sold you, I bet. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's probably what it is, because those words alone mean something, but they mean something beyond just the words themselves. What else we got? Yeah, you're right. They hear a mission, misguided as it is, and you're an old Mexican man. All right, cool. But you're right. They hear a mission. These people are on a mission, and young people want to feel like they're going to change the world. They want to feel like they're a part of something. Now, before I go forward, just gotta mention my sponsor again. Give them a shout out. Do not forget to head on over to libertynation.com, a proud sponsor of A Fresh Perspective with Jeff Charles. You can sign up for the daily briefing or subscribe to the member zone, or just check out the latest cutting edge conservative news and analysis. Never reruns. There is always new and fresh material on libertynation.com. Conservative news where truth matters. And I'll say this too, and I've said this before, Liberty Nation is a great site. It's not as big as a lot of the others. It's newer. I started in 2017. But if you want good and honest, nuanced takes, like if you wonder why I'm so nuanced all the time, if you wonder why I try to think as deeply as I do, Liberty Nation is a big part of making that happen, because I can't just go on that site and just write whatever. Like, I have to make sure I'm on point. Every other writer does too. So you're going to get quality at Liberty Nation, seriously. And this isn't just a spiel. I mean this. Like, you will get good content. You're not going to get a lot of outrage porn. You're not going to get all rah. Conservatives can do no wrong, what have you. Like, these people will break the issues down for you. You're not going to agree with everything, but at the same time, it'll make you think. All right, let's see what else we got here. Rod Stemler, Maj Toure explained this well in the gun community. You need ambassadors to market your product. Yes. Like Maj Toure always talks about, especially at CPAC, he always talks about how they need liaisons, how they need people, like specifically when he's talking about reaching out to the Black community. You need people who know how to sell that message to that audience. But this goes even outside of Black outreach. You've got to have people who, and they don't necessarily, I mean, it could be people who go into the community too, but our politicians need to be better at this. Our politicians, our influencers. I mean, we've had influencers and media personalities go to college campuses, and I'm sure a lot of them did good work. I'm glad that they went. I know that they went through a lot just to even speak because of all the censorship and all that crap. But it seems like they only give like a sound bites version of what conservative principles really are. And I get that in some of these cases they can't go as deep, but there should be a way that they can, because the left goes deep. I mean, they have their superficial stuff too, but at the same time, they're much better at selling it. Let's see. Biden and text messages. All right, fine, I'll move on. Yeah, you're right. That's why I'm going next. Okay. Oh, one more. Arnold Lawrence Jones stated that the message isn't the problem, but it's the messengers. You're right. When he said that, I was nodding my head profusely in the media pit as I was watching him. He brought the fire. So now we need to talk about something scary. I'm not sure if you guys heard about this, but this article is on Red State, and it's written by the lovely Kira Davis, who is awesome. And I actually wrote a piece about this too for Red State. It's behind the paywall, but I kind of expanded on what she was saying, because she was reporting about how the DNC and Democrats want wireless carriers to start censoring text messages. So this is really coming out of the fact that the Biden administration has failed to reach their goal of getting 70% of the American public vaccinated by July 4th. Now, Kira Davis notes that this was unrealistic in the first place, but Biden still cast that vision, so it's up to him to reach it, and he didn't. It seemed like there are a lot of people who were gung-ho about getting the vaccination, and they went ahead and got it. I got mine, but the numbers are slowing down a little bit because not everybody is on board with this, and that's fine. People can make their own decisions based on their health. But Kira Davis writes, quote, "The latest insanity regarding our COVID response will have the government targeting conservatives, not just by going door to door, as Psaki explained may happen soon. Now Biden's team and surrogates are making plans to censor your private text messages the same way big tech censors your social media posts." She also writes, quote, "In addition to their KGB for Dummies plan of knocking on your door to inquire about your personal medical decisions, the White House plans to activate left-wing groups and activists to put pressure on phone carriers to censor SMS text messages that may contain misinformation about COVID, the vaccines, and heaven knows what else they may consider to be wrong information." The article continues, quote, "Biden-allied groups, including the Democratic National Committee, are also planning to engage fact-checkers more aggressively and work with SMS carriers to dispel misinformation about vaccines that is sent over social media and text messages. The goal is to ensure that people who may have difficulty getting a vaccination because of issues like transportation see those barriers lessened or removed entirely." So there's some obvious issues with this, right? Kira points them out. She writes, quote, "What exactly constitutes misinformation? Whatever the fact checkers tell you is misinformation. Who do the fact checkers work for? The Democrats. Who do the Democrats hate? Republicans. Who has the Biden administration made public enemy number one through manufactured hysteria surrounding certain events at the Capitol? Conservatives. Who are the people expressing hesitancy at being experimental vaccinations for a virus with a 99.9 survival rate? And to this, she says a lot of people. I mean, because there are people on the left who don't want to take it. And for some people, it's really not necessary. There's no reason to take it. And for others, there are. Again, people should be allowed to make their own decisions. But the scary part is what's going on here. And I don't know if they're going to succeed at making this happen. But if this happens, this means that if you're talking to one of your loved ones or a friend or or somebody about the COVID-19 vaccine or the virus itself, and you're saying stuff and you're texting and you're saying stuff that maybe the fact checkers don't agree with, they want to be able to censor that. Now, I don't know how they would do it. I don't know if they would just block the message or erase it or what have you. But the Federal Communications Commission in 2018, they took a vote saying that wireless carriers have the right to block certain numbers, like for spam and then things like that. So they do have the right to do that, according to the federal government. And if this succeeds, if they manage to pressure these companies to censor certain text messages, then that will set a very dangerous precedent. Now, here's the thing. This is how the Democrats can impose an authoritarian agenda without the government actually passing legislation. If they can use social pressure, like let's say if they get activists to go out into the streets and AOC and other high-profile leftists to call for these companies to censor text messages, who's to say that they won't bow down to the pressure? Who's to say that they won't kowtow? We can't say this is impossible because we've already seen companies give in to the woke crowd, haven't we? We've already seen them say, okay, we'll do what you say. We don't want the boycotts. We don't want the pressure. We don't want to deal with you assholes. So we're just going to do what you say. We're just going to roll over. Who gives a crap about, so. But let's take it a step further. Let's take it a step further. We all know that if they succeed at this, that they're not going to stop here. I mean, you guys know that, right? You know that you know what I'm saying is true, right? You don't actually believe that if these companies actually roll over, that the left is going to let them stop at just weeding out misinformation about the coronavirus, right? No, we know where this is going. The thing is, they've already played their hand. Look at what they do with big tech. Look at how the hard left uses big tech. The overlords at Twitter, Facebook, Google, YouTube, and all the other social media companies, they already cracked down on conservative content. We have already seen that their censorship practices are motivated by political bias. Look at what happened with the Hunter Biden story in the lead up to the 2020 election in October. They shut that stuff down fast. And that is not the only time that they have throttled news stories that might be harmful to Democrats or to left-wing figures. You saw what they did to President Trump. They banned him because they pretended that he caused the riots on January 6th. Now, they know he didn't, but that's what the reason that they gave. They wanted to ban him in the first place anyway. And remember what happened shortly after? They purged all of those accounts. And some of us are still losing accounts. Now, some of this is just regular algorithmic stuff. It's happening to the left too. I mean, I'm not saying all of it is a bias, but we do know that there is a very evident bias. Former employees of Facebook and Twitter have admitted to doing this. So this isn't all in our heads. Now, there could be some areas where we think there's bias censorship and it really isn't. Okay, now I'm sure we're not right on everything. But the notion that the people that work for these companies don't have a distinct bias is absurd. They're in Silicon Valley, guys. These people are leftists, not liberals, leftists. So yeah, that is an issue. So if they're willing to do that, if they're willing to engage in censorship based on political affiliation on Twitter and Facebook to determine what you can and can't post, and to determine what you can and can't see, what type of content you are allowed to consume, then it's not a stretch to imagine that they would do the same with your text messages. What if you have an opinion on transgenders that doesn't jibe with woke theology? They will censor that. I guarantee you that is where these people want to take it. These people don't believe in free speech. They don't. I'm not saying everybody on the left. I think most people on the left value free speech, but the people on the far left, not so much. If you express an opinion on, on racism or on police brutality that they don't like, that's where they want to take this. Maybe I have my tinfoil hat on. Maybe I'm too cynical, but y'all know I'm probably right. So we shouldn't just be concerned about this just because of COVID-19. We need to think beyond that. We need to fight this because we know where they want to take it. And you know what? If Politico originally reported on this, and they only had like a couple paragraphs dedicated to it. So a lot of people miss that. I mean, conservative media was good about reporting on it, but not everybody reads it. So this stuff is flying under the radar as we're having all these debates over critical race theory and over parents going to school board meetings and protesting and suing schools because of woke theology and critical race theory or elements of it being taught in classrooms. We're focused on that, but whenever there's a big racial discussion or something that's really controversial, try to also keep an eye on what else is going on, because they will take advantage of those debates to try to push stuff that they know that most people wouldn't like. And I'm pretty sure that most people on the left wouldn't like this either. On the hard left, they would probably like it. But people who are just regular folks, sane folks on the left, liberals or moderates or what have you, they wouldn't be having this. And the fact that most people don't know that this is happening is scary, because we are distracted by other issues, which are important, but we have to always make sure that we're consuming as much content as our schedule allows, obviously. But that's why you're supposed to have commentators who will tell you the truth, which I'm one of them, hopefully. But this is an issue. This should not be. They shouldn't even be considering this. This shouldn't even be a serious discussion. It's like they're taking George Orwell, they're taking 1984, and they're using it as an instruction manual instead of as a cautionary tale. So we got to keep an eye on this, guys, because if we push back on this stuff hard enough, they won't do it. They won't be able to. But if they sneak it in, it'll be too late for us to say anything about it. Let's see. Arnold, sounds like China. Control the population and the message they want. That is exactly what that is. Yes, they want to control the message and the population through our personal communications, guys. Not even social media, our personal communications. It's insane. Let's see, Chuck Woolery. Is this the real Chuck Woolery? Really? Because that'd be cool. Anyway, Chuck Woolery asks, who decides what is information? Well, like Kira Davis said, it's the fact checkers. And who the fact checkers work for. They don't work for the people. They work for the Democrats. So the Democrats want to be able to decide what we can say to each other in personal conversations. Yeah, it's true. It is true. And yes, you're right. It is terrifying. I should have linked to the Politico article, but actually, if you click on Kira Davis's article, I think she also links to the original Politico article. Check it out. It is scary. Again, that this is even being talked about is terrifying. Let's see. How do they censor text messages real time? Do they have the technology to intercept bad speak that quickly? See, that's what I'm not sure about. But according to the article, they are in discussions on how this could be done. So it can be done, because we know that if you want to block a number, if somebody's harassing you, you can call your carrier and say, hey, I want to block this number. You don't even have to call them, I think. I think you can just do it straight from your phone. You can block certain numbers. So they have the ways to block certain communications. I'm not sure when it comes to the text messages, they have that data. They know what's being said. So it's not out of the realm of possibility. We got a super chat here. Thanks, Megan Cox. I appreciate you. This is scary. Surely people will be against this, right? Yes, this is an area where I'm not too cynical. I think if most people knew about this, regardless of political affiliation, they would be furious and they would be terrified. Because even though this isn't the government doing this directly, they're doing so at the behest of a political force. And the DNC is very much a political organization, right? It may not be a function of the government, but still, this is a way for them to enforce their authoritarian leanings without using the government. Let's see. Ooh, this is a good point. Sasha, all they need is another Capitol riot-like event using text messages to get the companies to give in. You're right. The sales pitch would be, we will save lives if we are able to monitor and to control the flow of information being shared over text messages. Do you want people to die? Do you want the terrorists to win? No? Okay. then let us make sure that we're keeping you safe by monitoring your text messages. I mean, if you're not up to anything bad, you shouldn't have anything to worry about. If you're not doing anything wrong, you shouldn't worry about us peeking at your text messages. We're here to make sure that you don't receive messages on things that you shouldn't receive messages about, or that you don't talk to somebody who's an extreme, who we have decided is an extremist. We're doing this for your own good. Nothing has stopped them to this point. Each success emboldens them to further authoritarian moves. Yeah, that's why we need to make sure that they don't have those successes, because you're right. Each time and the thing is, they don't have to get a lot to get a success. It could be a small success. This is not social media. How do they know the political beliefs of a random texter? I mean, they'd be able to tell by what you say. I mean, I can look at a Twitter account and pretty much tell where they stand politically by seeing the things that they say. So if there's people reading these things, or if these wireless carriers develop technology or algorithms, I mean, we hear about the algorithms, if they form algorithms that can look at these text messages, then I think that they could do this. The technology probably already exists. I wouldn't be surprised. Why do you think they really banned Trump? Because he was a Republican president. He pissed them off all the time. He would galvanize his supporters on social media, and he was a very powerful. It gave him a lot of power. That's why they banned him. You guys are very active on this one. Okay. They can build algorithms to stop you from texting certain words. Yes. What's even worse, though, I mean, going back to the example you just gave about, Capitol riot-like events, what happens when the algorithm is able to report the use of certain words to the NSA or to the FBI? Remember that movie with Will Smith and Gene Hackman? I think it was called Enemy of the State. And this was back when I was a kid, but Gene Hackman plays this like former intelligence officer who's always very paranoid about what the government's listening in on. And he was saying, when you're on the phone, they pick up words like, bombs or Allah or what have you, and they use that to weed people out. Now, I don't know how true that was back then. It was probably 100% true, but I don't see why they couldn't do that with text messages. And you guys know me. I'm not one to fearmonger, right? I'm not the paranoid type. I come out against that. But it was in the report. Politico actually reported. Like they're not trying to cover this up too much. They're trying to fly it under the radar, but they're not fully trying to cover it up. They're saying that this is going on. Let's see. Another super chat. Transparency and merit. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. What's your opinion on what's going on in South Africa? Many believe America is going in the same direction. I haven't kept up with it. I haven't been as on it when it comes to foreign policy lately. I used to be a foreign policy nut years ago, but I haven't paid much attention to it. So I will have to look into that for you. Let's see. All right. Scott Mezek, the problem many on the left don't realize is that this tactic can get them someday as well, as things spin beyond rational thought becomes criminal and can catch them in the same trap. You're right, because not everybody on the left is far to the left. So they have to be afraid of this too. They have to be concerned as well, because the hard left will go after everybody, not just conservatives, people who just aren't as far left as they would like, or they're not in line enough with their belief system. So this is a serious issue for people on both sides. We have to make sure that this doesn't happen. Like, we should be out in the street saying, like, shaming them for even thinking about this. Let's see. Aaron the Human. Check out the lockdown app. Smarter Everyday YouTuber Destin Sandlin had it created. May be a digital speakeasy in the future. Okay, I think I see what you're saying. The lockdown app. So an app where you can say what you want to say without it being monitored by the bad guys. Be our digital speakeasy. Okay, I think I got what you're saying. I mean, I get it, but we shouldn't need that in the first place. Like, if we do need it and we have it, great, but we shouldn't have to have that. We should be able to stop this. I don't think that most people would be on board with this. I don't think most Democrats would. I don't think most Republicans would. So we have to do what we can to let as many people know about what's going on as possible, whether it's your family, friends, or if you have a platform, if you're social media or whatever, make sure that people know what's going on, because it is that important. Because after text messages, what about just regular phone conversations? This is a slippery slope. This could easily go to an evil place. And I think it will, because we know how government works. It may even get to the point to where companies start doing this as a regular practice, and then the government says, okay, well, let's just enshrine it into law then. After that, we're fucked. We can't go back. We can, but it'll be very, very difficult at that point. Let's see. Yep, Chuck Woolery, it is the First Amendment. And exactly, where does it end? It won't end. It won't. It'll get to the point to where you have to just like write snail mail to be able to tell somebody what you want to say. And they'll probably even have the post office reading that too. So we can't let this happen. And I'm not saying that it's automatically going there. I'm not saying that this is happening, but I'm saying it could. And if we don't do anything about it, if we're not aware of it, then it will. Because why not? Why wouldn't they do it? If we're going to let them do it, why wouldn't they? If the government has a chance to overstep its boundaries and we let them, they're going to do it. That's the way it's worked throughout history. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Thank you guys very much for joining me. I really appreciate you. Be sure to, if you want to support my work, be sure to subscribe to my online community at afreshperspective.locals.com. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so now. Hit that notification bell. Please like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, keep your minds free.